Hello
God
everyone,
have mercy
tonight
on my soul.
we're stepping into the cold stone heart of a place few leave. Unchanged the Tower of London. The air is thick with mist, not quite fog, not quite breath. And the walls hum with secrets that have never been safely buried. The torches flicker in patterns that don't match the wind. Something feels watched. You're not just in a tower. You're inside her final morning. This is where we begin the last hours of Anne Boleyn, England's most enigmatic queen, whose mind was as sharp as her downfall was swift. Her enemies claimed ambition. Her supporters whispered injustice. But tonight, you're going to walk the quiet halls with her. And spoiler alert, you probably wouldn't survive this. Not because of the axe, but because of the silence. The way it presses on you like velvet soaked in rain. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is there. I love seeing our sleepy little global village come together. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake up before the sun even tries. No birds, no bells, just breath and cold linen. The tower has stone for lungs, and this morning it exhales slowly. You feel it in your bones, each one humming like it knows this is the last time it'll be counted in a bed. Your cell is cleaner than expected. The guards were told to honor the Queen, though no one quite knows what that means anymore. Are you still Anne the Queen, or Anne the Condemned? History hasn't decided yet. You swing your legs over the edge of the straw-stuffed mattress feet, landing on the icy floor like you're stepping into a trial. You don't shiver. You don't blink. Instead, you look to the window, not barred, but narrowed to the kind of slit that can't let freedom through. Outside the sky is a bruised gray smeared with clouds and hesitation. The woman assigned to watch you sleeps, sitting up in the corner, her cap askew, her hands folded like she's praying for the wrong person. You stand. Today isn't about grace. It isn't about sin. It's about clarity. Your night had been short. You didn't sleep so much as float. Thoughts bobbing like apples in water, flashes of laughter, the smell of ink, the rustle of silk the moment Henry first looked at you like you were worth a war. That's long gone now. Now all you have is stone and time. You take slow steps around the room, not pacing, tracing. This is yours for the next few hours. Then nothing will be. Even your body will stop belonging to itself. There's a tray near the door. Someone had slipped it in without waking you. Bread, soft cheese, a small bowl of berries. You ignore it. Not out of defiance, out of precision. You're too focused, too alert. Hunger would only dull the edges of your thoughts, and today they need to be razor sharp. On the small table sits your prayer book. The one you've been annotating for weeks now. Margins scribbled with Latin notes to Elizabeth and coded references no one but you and God could decode. You open to a random page. The psalm begins, "Judge me, O Lord, for I have walked in mine integrity." You smirk. There's something funny about how poetry always finds the accused. The door creaks, not open, just settling. Or maybe it's the wind. Or maybe the tower is reminding you it sees everything. Always has. You whisper into the room, not to the guard, not to God. Just out. I am not afraid of dying, you say. And you mean it, mostly. Because it's not death you fear. It's what they'll say after. You glance at your hands. They don't shake. You half expected them to. The poets always claim queens tremble prettily before death. You're not interested in playing that part. Your hands rest calmly against your skirt, as if waiting for the next move in a game everyone else has already folded on. There's a moment, just a flicker, where you almost reach for the bread. Not because you're hungry, but because there's something appealing in doing something ordinary. Chewing, swallowing. Pretending for just 1 minute that this is breakfast in Greenwich, that you'll walk out of this room and into sunlight, and not toward a blade honed in France. But you don't. You walk instead to the window, tilt your head to the sliver of sky, and inhale. The tower smells like cold iron and damp wool and old breath. And behind it all lavender. A servant must have changed the linens with something perfumed. Maybe someone thought that was kind. Maybe they thought the scent of flowers would make the end more bearable. Instead, it makes it more vivid. Because you were once a girl in France, dancing with laughter tucked behind your teeth, hair braided with lavender sprigs, thinking yourself untouchable. That was before Henry, before the crown, before the court smiled with knives. Historians still argue whether you ever truly loved him. Maybe you did. Maybe you loved the idea of being loved like that. Or maybe you loved the way the world bent around your presence when he looked at you like you were carved from starlight. But now the starlight's gone and all that's left is reflection, harsh, flat, edged in iron. There's a sound in the corridor. Boots, measured. 2 sets, not guards. Guards stomp. These steps, they glide. You step back from the window. You don't want them to see you like that, softened by memory. The door opens with ceremony. Not creak, not rush, ceremony. And in walks a man you recognize, Sir Kingston, Constable of the Tower, the man in charge of your imprisonment. He looks uncomfortable in his own body, as if his armor is too tight or his conscience is pinching his ribs. He bows not deeply, not shallow. The awkward middle ground reserved for someone who used to matter more. "My lady," he says. "Not your majesty, not Queen Anne, just my lady." You nod. "May I speak plainly?" he asks. You raise an eyebrow. At this point, what other way is there? He hesitates. "The king has delayed the execution to tomorrow." You exhale through your nose. Not relief, not fear, annoyance. Another day, another sunrise to survive. Another 24 hours of watching the walls lean closer. You smile thin and unsweetened. "Tell His Majesty I thank him for the gift of suspense." Kingston doesn't smile. He shuffles, clears his throat, and sets a folded piece of parchment on the table. Then he turns and leaves the door shutting with the finality of a verdict. You don't touch the parchment right away. Let it sit. Let it breathe. It wants your attention. It's hungry for it. And you've learned that withholding attention is sometimes the only power left to you. You return to your cot and sit. Let your skirt spread out in practiced grace. You were raised to charm rooms, raised to balance books on your head and secrets in your sleeves. None of that stopped this. You finally unfold the letter. It's not from Henry. It's from Cromwell. Of course. Always Cromwell, with his oily politeness and conscience folded so tightly it could fit in a coin purse. The letter is full of formality. He reminds you of your dignity. He refers to the unfortunate situation. He notes the king's desire for a swift and honorable end. He even wishes you peace. Peace. From Cromwell. You laugh. Softly. A single startled laugh that surprises even the woman watching from the corner. Peace from a man who traded your future for his convenience. Peace from a man who filled the court with rumors like it was a bakery and betrayal was the bread. You fold the letter back up. Set it beside the untouched food. Let them sit there like a still life in a painting nourishment manipulation, and your refusal to bite into either. You glance at your book of hours again, and this time, you pick it up. The page opens not to a psalm, but to the corner where you once scribbled a single word in the tiniest hand. Remember, not directed at God, directed at them. You trace the ink lightly, because memory is a sharper weapon than any blade. And your legacy? It's not in this stone cell. It's not even in your blood. It's in how you'll be remembered, and that you still have some control over. You close the book slowly, letting your fingers rest on the worn leather cover like it's a pulse you're trying to steady. Outside, the sky has grown brighter, but not friendlier. The light is gray and thin, more of a suggestion than an invitation. You imagine it must be the same kind of light that hangs above battlefields after the dust has settled. Not peaceful, just finished. You don't stand. You let the stillness wrap around you like a final layer of silk. And then, without ceremony, the past arrives. Not as memory, as sensation. You smell rose oil. You hear the clatter of hooves on cobblestones, the rustle of petticoats, the way the court used to part when you walked in. Not out of reverence, out of fear. They feared the way you looked at Henry like he was yours. They feared the way he let you speak at council meetings. They feared the fact that your intelligence didn't wear perfume, it wore armor. Historians still argue whether you were arrogant or just aware of your power. Either way, you used it, and they hated you for that. You remember the court at Greenwich, the silk, the gossip, the eyes that smiled but never blinked. Henry used to say your laugh made him feel like spring. You once believed him. For a minute, maybe two. There's a knock. Gentle. And then she enters, your sister Mary. No guards, no escort. Just her and that tired smile she's been wearing since birth. She looks older now. Or maybe you do. Her eyes fall on you like she's trying to read a letter someone else crumpled. She doesn't curtsy. You don't ask her to. She walks in slowly, eyes darting to the corners, like they're listening. She sits on the edge of the cot and exhales through her teeth. You're thinner, she says. You smirk. Fashionable. She doesn't laugh. I brought you something, she says, digging into the folds of her cloak. She pulls out a small linen pouch stitched with the Boleyn crest frayed at the edges. She places it in your palm. It's warm. You open it carefully. Inside, a tiny wooden cross, worn smooth. You recognize it. It belonged to your mother. You swallow hard, but not because you're emotional. Because this is a message. Not one of comfort, one of remembrance. You raise an eyebrow. Why now? Mary shrugs. You should have it. You don't ask what that means. You know. Mary looks at you the way people look at statues they don't believe are watching. And then she says something soft. George is gone. Your fingers tighten around the pouch. You expected it. But hearing it feels like stepping barefoot on cold marble, sudden and sharp. George, your brother. Your co-conspirator in jokes too smart for the room. Your ally in ambition. The one person who could finish your sentence with a smirk. Gone. Because the Crown needed a cleaner narrative. Mary doesn't cry. Neither do you. That's not how your family mourns. You file grief between pages of obligation and tuck it behind duty. There's no time for softness, not in a dynasty. You say, did he suffer? Mary hesitates. And in that silence, you find your answer. She changes the subject. Typical Boleyn defense tactic. Do you want me to stay? She asks. You look at her, really look. You see the girl you used to chase through orchards. The one who once tripped over her hem trying to impress a French tutor. The one whose heart broke slower than her reputation. You say no. She nods, almost relieved. She knows staying wouldn't help either of you. You hold the wooden cross between your palms and close your eyes for a moment. You wonder if your mother ever held it like this in a moment of doubt or rage or longing. You hope so. You want to feel connected to something older than betrayal. When you open your eyes again, Mary is standing. She looks down at you with the kind of gaze usually reserved for graves. "Do you forgive him?" she asks. You know who she means. You say no. Then softer, "Not yet." She nods again, and then she's gone. No hug, no tearful goodbye, just the rustle of skirts and the sound of duty leaving the room. You sit for a long time after, holding the cross, staring at the door, wondering if forgiveness is even part of the ritual when your heart has been turned into strategy. You set the cross on the table beside the Book of Hours. Let it watch you. Let it witness the hours left. Because memory will fail and records will fade, but objects remember. The room is too quiet now. Not peaceful, just hollow. The kind of silence that makes your thoughts louder. You pace once, then stop. There's nowhere to go. The tower doesn't have corners to hide in. It offers no distractions. Just history pressing in from all sides. You move toward the small wooden table and open your Book of Hours again. Not because you're particularly devout, not anymore, but because it's something to do with your hands. The margins of the book are full of annotations, small, precise. Notations only a scholar or a spy would bother decoding. On one page, you've written a name 3 times. Not Henry, not Elizabeth. The name of a woman whose identity historians still debate. Was it a confidant, a servant, a scapegoat? Whoever she was, you remember her, which means she mattered. Historians still argue whether you left clues in this book. A quiet map of blame and truth and memory. But if they knew how deliberate your pen had become in these final days, they'd stop arguing and start listening. You underline a psalm in deep brown ink. "The Lord is on my side. I will not fear what can man do unto me." A rhetorical question, of course, but the tower is an excellent answer. There's a knock. Louder this time. Not a friend. Not family. It's the priest. Vic, you brace yourself. He enters with the careful movements of a man who's been in too many rooms like this. Robes slightly wrinkled. Hands folded just a bit too tight. Eyes scanning your face like a physician looking for signs of spiritual infection. You don't rise. He doesn't expect you to. "Lady Anne," he says. You nod. No father, no titles. Just 2 people with different opinions on what happens after your head hits the straw. He begins softly. "I come bearing the king's blessing." You snort. "Is that what we're calling it now?" He flinches just slightly, but recovers. He offers you a seat. You stay standing. He begins a soft, winding homily about forgiveness, humility, surrender. His words are practiced, full of candlelight and repentance. But you hear the gaps, the hesitations, the pauses, where he almost says what he's really thinking. "I don't know why you're dying either." You let him speak, for a while. Then you interrupt. "What did he promise you?" He blinks. "I beg your pardon, the king. What did he promise? A better post, safer passage, a clean conscience. I am here to offer you spiritual no. You're here because he told you to be here, and you said yes. So let's start there." The priest stares at the floor. That's fine. You're used to people looking away. You take a step closer. "Do you think I need saving, you ask?" He opens his mouth, closes it again. Finally, he says, "It is not for me to judge. But you will anyway." Silence. Then quietly he says, "You have time." for confession. You tilt your head. And what would I confess to? He hesitates. Everything his eyes seem to say. Or nothing. Because at this point, who even remembers what you were accused of? Adultery? Incest? Witchcraft? Treason? All words tossed like knives until one of them stuck. You give him a small smile. I've already made my peace, you say. With whom you look past him, at the stone, at the walls that have watched everything, with myself. He exhales like a man granted permission to leave. But before he turns, you ask, tell me something. He pauses. Do you believe I'm guilty? A long beat. Then with a tremor in his voice, he says, I believe the king is merciful. You laugh, loud, unladylike, alive. Then you, Father, are far more dangerous than I ever was. He flinches again, then leaves. You sit down slowly, body buzzing, not with fear, but clarity. There's a difference between dying and being erased. And you, Anne Boleyn, will not be erased. Not by a priest, not by a husband, not by time. You reach again for your book of hours and turn to a blank page. You begin to write not a prayer, not a confession, a reminder, one that someone someday will read and feel like they've just stepped into your shadow. You write, I was here, I saw, I knew, and you underline it twice. The cell has warmed slightly, not from the sun, which refuses to do anything meaningful today, but from your body, your breath, your steady insistence on staying alive just a little longer than expected. You rise from the chair, roll your shoulders once, and step toward the door. You won't open it. It's not allowed. But you stand close enough to hear the quiet murmurs of the tower. There's something oddly tender about the muffled sounds of guards, shifting weight, a bird pecking somewhere, just beyond the stones, the drip of rainwater finding an ancient groove. Then like clockwork, the knock comes. Not loud, not urgent, just official. The woman enters, the one they sent to dress you. She bows not deeply, but with care. Her face is unfamiliar. You wonder if that's deliberate. She carries something folded in her arms, your final gown. It's made of pale silk, cool gray, with cream embroidery along the hem. No royal red, no morning black. Just the color of fog, uncertain and soft. You say nothing, but she senses your question. The Queen's tailor made it, she offers eyes down. It was decided this would be most dignified. Decided. By whom? Henry Cromwell. Some committee of men who think a woman's final appearance matters more than her final words. You almost laugh. Almost. Instead, you touch the fabric. It's smooth, luxurious, meant to drape rather than cling. A dress built for ceremony, not comfort. The woman helps you change in silence. You lift your arms. She removes your shift, your linen. Cold air wraps you briefly, reminding you that your body is still yours for now. The silk slips over you like a sigh. You let her fasten the ties, smooth the shoulders, adjust the sleeves. It's an odd thing being dressed for death by someone who won't look you in the eye. Historians still argue whether this final gown was a gift or a gesture of guilt. Some say it was Henry's last show of affection. Others call it part of the illusion, make her beautiful, make it easier to watch. But as the fabric settles over your bones, you understand something. This isn't about beauty. It's about control. They want to control what the crowd sees. A graceful end. A composed queen. No panic. No blood-soaked linens. But you see the seams, and they are terrified of your calm. The woman, her name might be Margaret, you're not sure, adjusts your hair. Would you like a veil, she asks quietly. You shake your head. No need to hide what's already decided. She nods, unsure whether that's poetic or angry. Maybe both. She offers you a small mirror. You take it, hold it up. Look, you expect to see a ghost? Instead, you see something worse. A woman, still breathing, still entirely herself. And you realize that's what they've failed to strip from you. Not the crown, not the title. Your presence. The kind of presence that doesn't need a throne. You lower the mirror and hand it back. The woman hesitates again, then says, "I pray you are at peace." You reply, "I pray you never have to learn how peace is made." She curtsies deeper this time, and she leaves. You're alone again, but not really. The silk whispers when you move, like it has secrets of its own. You walk to the window and stand tall. Let the light catch the embroidery. Let the towers see you as you are. Because in the end, the executioner may take your head, but you'll decide how they remember your spine. And today, it is made of something far stronger than bone. There's a scratching sound in the rafters. Small, feathered, persistent. You glance up, not startled, just curious. And there it is, a bird fluttering awkwardly against the high stone arch above your cell. A sparrow. It darts back and forth, lost and panicked, its wings tapping stone like soft drum beats. It's not supposed to be here. Not in this place, not in this moment, not with you. But here it is. And somehow, it makes perfect sense. You walk slowly to the center of the room and tilt your head back, watching the little creature trace invisible paths in its frantic confusion. There's no way out for it, not unless someone opens the door. It will exhaust itself trying to escape a space it didn't choose. You understand that far too well. You sit back on your cot dress, whispering around you. The sparrow flits again, then pauses on a beam chest, rising and falling like a heartbeat made of feather. You're not the first you say aloud, and you won't be the last. The guard outside shifts, perhaps at your voice, perhaps out of boredom. You don't care. Let them think you're mad. Let them think the queen speaks to birds on her final day. It would not be the strangest rumor. Historians still argue whether you lost your mind in these final hours. Some say you wept uncontrollably. Others insist you laughed as if it were a play. But none of them were here. None of them heard the flutter of wings echo off stone. You watch the sparrow again. It's not afraid of you. Or maybe it's too afraid of everything else to notice you're part of it. You wonder absurdly tenderly if it's a sign of what you're not sure. Freedom, a soul leaving the body early, or just a bird trapped in a building full of ghosts. You once told Henry that you hated the idea of cages, that you preferred gardens and windows flung wide. He said that was dangerous talk for a woman. But you've always known danger lives in stillness, not in flight. The sparrow takes off again, skimming so low you feel the air shift. It nearly brushes your head, then vanishes into a darker corner. Gone, but not forgotten, like so many things. You close your eyes for a moment, not to pray, to listen, and in that silence you remember. A hunt at Haver, your father's estate. You were 12, maybe 13. You saw a hawk dive for a sparrow and catch it midair. Everyone cheered. You did not. You stared at the feathers that drifted down like slow confetti and thought even beauty dies gasping. No one noticed your silence. They rarely did. You were always thinking too much for a girl. Too clever. Too aware. Too aware of how quickly admiration turns to fear when a woman stops smiling and starts speaking. And now, that's the only power left to you. Not your body, not your name, your awareness, your refusal to panic, your refusal to perform. You stand again and walk to the writing table. Take the stub of a quill. Pull the Book of Hours close. This time you don't write scripture. You sketch. A sparrow. Small, hunched wings, slightly uneven. Underneath you, right even in cages, we sing. You place the book aside. Let someone find that years from now. Let them try to guess what it means. Let them argue. Let them write books about your last words and forget this drawing ever mattered. That will be your secret rebellion. The sparrow flutters once more, then disappears entirely through some unseen crevice you hadn't noticed before. A way out. You smile. Of course. Of course it found the gap. Because everything does eventually. Even the truth. Even you. You return to your chair and sit again, the silk pooling at your ankles, the air still tingling from the beat of wings. And for the first time today, you let yourself feel tired. Not defeated. Just human. Just here. Still waiting. Still watching. Still Anne. There's a sound just beyond the door. Not footsteps. Not keys. Fabric. You know it before she enters. Mary. Again. You half smile before she even steps inside. But when the door opens, it's not her. It's someone you haven't seen in years. Someone you never expected to see here. Your sister in shadows, Jane Parker now, Lady Rochford. Your sister-in-law, your brother's widow. You freeze like a string's been pulled taut inside you. You remember the way she used to glide through court like a rumor in human form, soft, unreadable, always present but never central. A perfect political wife. She curtsies. Too low for comfort. Lady Anne, she says. You raise an eyebrow. Lady Rochford, they let you in. She flinches at the name. I asked to come, she says. They allowed it. You wait. She doesn't move closer. Just stands there holding her hands, like she doesn't know what they're for anymore. The silence stretches delicate as blown glass. Finally, she says, I thought you might want company. You don't. From her, but you nod anyway. Let the moment live. She sits slowly, as if expecting the stone to reject her. You watch her closely, because you remember the trial. You remember the things she didn't say. The things she let hang in the air like perfume no one wanted to name. Historians still argue whether Jane helped bring you down or simply failed to stand up. And to be fair, sometimes the difference is microscopic. She pulls something from her sleeve, a letter. Unsealed, unfolded. You don't take it. You wait. She says, I found this in George's things. After. That word. After. It lands like a blade dropped on velvet. You hold out your hand. She gives you the letter, and you read. Not quickly. You let each line settle like sediment in a glass of water. George's handwriting. Familiar curves. The way he loops his G's. It isn't a love letter. It's worse. It's regret. Regret for ambition. For serving a family that traded hearts for politics. For thinking you both could outwit the very system you thought you'd mastered. At the bottom, one sentence is underlined. Tell Anne I never blamed her. You blink. Not because of tears, because it's a sentence that rewrites everything. You fold the letter. Set it on the table like a holy relic. You look at Jane. She still isn't crying. That's something the Boleyns and Rochfords always had in common. Tears were private currency. You say, why bring this now? She looks down at her hands. Because I didn't know what else to do. A moment. Then, and I'm afraid. You study her. She doesn't mean afraid of you. She means herself. Of what comes next. Of the silence that comes after the blade. You nod slowly. You should be. She finally looks up, and you see it there, the crack in her composure. Not guilt, not sorrow, loneliness, the kind that clings to women who outlived their usefulness at court. You say, they won't come for you yet, she whispers, But they will. You don't offer comfort. Instead, you say, then make sure they remember who you were before they decide what you were. She lets that settle, then stands. She doesn't curtsy this time. Doesn't need to. At the door, she pauses. Then so softly you almost miss it, I loved him. You believe her. Not because she says it like a confession, because she says it like a ruin. Then she's gone. And once again, you're left with stone silk and the echo of women who had no place to put their power. You pick up George's letter, hold it tight, then slide it between the pages of your book of hours. Not hidden, just waiting. Because someday someone will find it. And maybe then history will feel less like a sentence and more like a question. You don't move for a while. Not because you're tired, though you are, but because something has shifted in the room. The kind of shift that doesn't creak or hum, but simply settles, like ash after a fire, like dust finally deciding where to land. George's letter still warms your lap through the book of hours like his hand never fully let go. You stare at the spine of the book, then at your own reflection in the window's warped pane. The gown glows faintly in the overcast light. You don't look like a prisoner. You don't look like a queen. You look like someone who knows. And that's always been the problem. You rise slowly and return the book to the shelf they let you keep. There aren't many, just 3 small volumes. The Book of Hours, a copy of Petrarch, and a plain English psalter with your name carved inside, not elegantly, but with the deep grooves of a bored teenage girl. You trace the letters with your fingers. Anne Boleyn. Nothing added, nothing royal. The woman you were before everything else was assigned to you. You sit again not on the cot this time, but on the small stool near the window. You place your palms on your knees, breathe deeply, and allow yourself for the first time to wonder what your daughter will remember. Elizabeth. Red hair like fire in wet leaves. A child with a look far too knowing for her size. You remember the day she reached for your necklace and tugged not to play, but as if to say, you don't need this anymore. You smiled. She frowned. And something in your chest clicked into place. Historians still argue whether you truly loved her or if she was just another pawn in your long campaign for security. They've clearly never met their own child. Because what you felt wasn't strategy. It was gravity. You wonder if she'll hear what they say about you. If she'll believe it. If someone will bother to whisper your name at bedtime. Or if she'll be told her mother was a witch, a traitor. A woman with ambitions too sharp for her own safety. You hope not. But you also know the truth survives best when it's folded into stories. That's why you keep writing. You open Petrarch, flip past the love sonnets, the laments, stop at a random verse. Each moment fled, nor could my hand detain a single shadow from the falling day. You chuckle softly. Oh, Petrarch, always so dramatic. But yes, today is falling. You can feel it, like sun slipping behind a curtain you didn't draw. The door creaks again. This time, no one enters. A pause, then a voice from outside. You have a visitor. Your brows rise. Again, but this time, it's not Mary, not Jane, not the priest. It's Master Thomas Cranmer, the Archbishop. You don't rise, but you nod for them to let him in. He steps in slowly, tall and awkward, as if unsure whether he's here to comfort you or confirm your fate. You glance at his robes. Rich, but not gaudy. The man dresses like someone who knows his name will be written in other people's margins. He bows low. You do not return it. He straightens. Lady Anne. You say nothing. Let him build the bridge. He tries. I come on behalf of His Majesty. With a final gesture of clemency, you raise an eyebrow. Clemency, he clears his throat. The king has graciously ordered that your execution be carried out with the sword, not the axe. You blink, a beat, then a slow nod. Of course, because that changes everything. He flinches. You smile thinly. No block. Just kneel and trust. That was his instruction. Cranmer says quieter now. He felt it would be more merciful. You stare at him until he drops his eyes, because that is what this has come to. Mercy measured in blade design. He adds, fumbling slightly. The swordsman was brought from Calais. He's skilled. You let out a soft sound, not quite a laugh. Lovely. I do admire imported craftsmanship. He doesn't know what to do with that. He tries to pivot. To offer prayer with you, no. You say it gently, almost kindly, but with finality. I've already spoken to God, you add. He listens better when men aren't translating. Cranmer's lips press together. He nods finely and withdraws. Another one gone. Another who thinks you're already a ghost. You close Patriarch and set it back beside the others. 3 books, 1 child, no grave. That's what's left. And somehow that's enough. The tower shifts again, not with movement, but with meaning. The light through the slitted window has gone faintly golden. That false kind of sunset that visits too early in places where joy does not live. It stretches across the floor in long fingers brushing the hem of your dress as if to remind you the day is dwindling, Anne. You look down at your hands now folded in your lap, like they're waiting to be called. They used to sign decrees. They used to wear rings heavy with meaning stones that caught fire in torchlight. Now they are just hands, pale, lined faintly with ink. You flex your fingers, then tuck them away again. Because someone is coming. You can feel it. And not just anyone. You're right. The door opens with more weight this time. A shuffle. A clearing of the throat. Then he appears. The priest again. Not the same one. You know that instantly. This one is younger. Softer eyes. And shaking though he tries to hide it. He bows. Deeply. Lady Anne, he says. You don't respond. Let him sit in it for a moment. He steps forward, hands trembling slightly. In one of them, a tiny book. Smaller than yours. His fingers press around it like it's a talisman. I've been sent, he begins to prepare you for tomorrow. Have they run out of others, you ask, lightly. He flinches but keeps going. He's braver than he looks. I requested this. Volunteered. That surprises you. You narrow your eyes. Why, he hesitates. I've read your speeches, your letters, your thinking. He looks up. I don't believe you're what they say you are. You smile faintly. No one is. He nods quickly, as if affirming it makes it more true. I know I cannot change what's to come. He continues. But I thought, perhaps you might find peace in confession. Not to me, to God. You consider. Tilt your head. Then say, tell me your name. He blinks. Pardon, I'm not confessing to a stranger. Oh, William. Father William. You give a small nod. You're young. I'm new. You smirk. Then this must be quite the trial run. He doesn't laugh, but his shoulders relax by a millimeter. You stand and begin to pace slowly. Let your thoughts stretch, not just for him, for you. Because you've spent days replaying every moment that brought you here and now. As the end clicks closer, the film begins to slow. You say, I don't need absolution. William opens his mouth, but you hold up a hand. I need understanding. He waits. You speak slowly. There are lies, piled on lies. They made me monstrous, unfaithful, incestuous. dangerous. You turn, meeting his eyes. But none of that frightened them as much as the truth. He asks quietly, "Which was that I was unafraid?" A beat, then another. You sit down again. Lean forward, resting your hands on your knees. "You want a confession?" He nods. You whisper, "I loved power. I loved the way it made people look at me differently. I loved knowing I could walk into a room and everyone else's breath would pause for just a beat." You glance down. "And I loved him in the beginning." Henry, you nod. "I loved that he saw something in me no one else dared name." You pause. He stopped seeing it the moment I believed it too. William's face twitches. Empathy, pain, understanding. It's all there and it surprises you. You know, you murmur, "I never practiced witchcraft. But if I had, I'd have made him keep his promises." He actually smiles at that. "Progress." You continue. "My sins are real. But they are not the ones they wrote down." You lift your gaze again. "And I will not die ashamed of them." William exhales softly, then offers the book. "You may take this if you'd like." You don't. Instead, you say, "Leave it on the table." He does. He stands. You can tell he wants to say something grand, something comforting. But instead, he simply bows. And as he turns, you say, "Pray for my daughter." He stops, looks back. "I will," he promises. And then he's gone. The silence returns warm this time. Earned. You rise again. The sky beyond the window has shifted from gold to ash. And tomorrow waits, polishing its blade. You sleep, but only barely. It's the kind of sleep that flutters against waking, that floats just under the surface, like a ribbon on water, never sinking, never still. When you open your eyes, you know it's still night. The tower has grown quiet in a new way, a deeper quiet. The kind of hush that blankets not just the halls, but the people inside them. Everyone knows what morning brings, and no one wants to say it aloud. You sit up. The gown is wrinkled from where it pooled under you, but you smooth it with practiced hands. Dignity matters even now, especially now. Your mouth is dry. You sip the water they left, and it tastes like stone. But it does its job. You notice the candle's burned halfway down. Another one waits beside it, fresh and untouched. You light it. The flame dances like it's nervous too. For the first time in hours, you open your book of hours not for ritual, but for choice. You flip to a page you haven't yet marked. You read aloud. "My times are in thy hand. Deliver me from the hand of mine enemies, and from them that persecute me." You pause. Let that verse settle in the corners of the room, because the persecution has already happened. Now you're just waiting for the punctuation. There's movement in the corridor. No voices. Just motion. You imagine the guards shuffling in uncomfortable armor, whispering about who drew the short straw for the escort. You wonder if any of them prayed for you, or if they just prayed they wouldn't drop the blade. A sound outside your window. Familiar. You smile. The sparrow, again. You can't see it not from this angle, but you know its rhythm now. The beat of wings against narrow air. It stayed through the night, like it knew you would too. You say aloud, "You're still here." Maybe you're talking to the bird. Maybe you're talking to yourself. Historians still argue whether you held on to hope in your final hours, whether you thought Henry might change his mind, that mercy would arrive, like a pardon on horseback. But mercy doesn't gallop. It waits. And you're not here for mercy. You're here for truth. You take the priest's little book, Williams, and open it for the first time. There's a note inside. Not long. Just one line. You are not forgotten. You close the book carefully as if it's made of something fragile. It is. Everything is. The knock comes. Not sharp, not hesitant, just present. A signal. You stand, smooth the gown again, touch the wooden cross Mary gave you tucked into your sleeve. It presses against your wrist with quiet urgency. You walk toward the door, but not too fast. They'll open it when they're ready. And they do. The door swings inward with the weight of history behind it. Sir Kingston again. His face is pale. His eyes are careful. "Lady Anne," he says, "it is time." You nod. Your voice is steady. "I'm ready." They step aside. The corridor is lined with guards, all staring straight ahead. Not one meets your eyes. You almost want to thank them for that. You walk slowly. Let your feet memorize the stones beneath them. You feel each step as a sentence. Not a final one, but one that needs to be said. The wind greets you before the sky does. It brushes your cheeks cool and clean, like a baptism for someone who never asked to be saved. The courtyard is empty, except for the scaffold. And the swordsman. He's already there, already ready. You note his poise. He doesn't look at you. You understand. This isn't about him. It never was. It's about how you stand, how you breathe, how you make even this your own. The scaffold waits like a stage that never wanted its actors. You walk toward its spine-straight steps, steady as if this is nothing more than another court appearance. In a way it is. But the judgment's already passed. There will be no appeals, no witnesses to sway, no last-minute revelations or pardon-bearing messengers galloping through the gates. Only the executioner. He stands quietly beside the block hoodless. A Frenchman, as promised. No axe, only the long, slender sword at his side, sheathed now, as if that somehow makes it less real. He does not meet your eyes. You don't blame him. You wouldn't either. The crowd is smaller than you imagined. No roaring sea of peasants, no jeering nobles. Just a few faces scattered, each one trying to look solemn, to look like they belong here. You wonder if any of them will remember what you wore, what you said, how you looked. They'll all think themselves historians in the retelling. But history forgets, with remarkable convenience. Sir Kingston offers you a hand to climb the wooden steps. You decline. Your legs still work, and you want them to know that. You want yourself to know that. You reach the top. The platform creaks a low wooden groan like the scaffold itself objects to its purpose. There is no shadow yet. The sun is still low, dragging behind clouds like it's reluctant to attend. A small table rests nearby with a cloth, a prayer book, a white blindfold. You glance at them all. No one speaks. Not yet. The executioner makes a small gesture, something between a bow and an apology. You nod back. This is his duty. You have yours. A man steps forward and reads your sentence aloud. Treason, adultery, incest. The same familiar chorus of sins thrown like mud until one of them stuck. You close your eyes for a moment, not in shame, but to mark the absurdity. Historians still argue whether you were guilty of anything more than being inconvenient. Then it's your turn to speak. You step forward just one pace and turn slightly toward the crowd. You inhale. Speak. Ladies and gentlemen, I am come hither, not to accuse any man, nor to speak anything of that, whereof I am accused and condemned to die, but to die here according to the law. A pause. I pray God save the king, and send him long to reign over you. For a gentler nor a more merciful prince was there never. You pause again. The words taste like coins. You swallow. And thus I take my leave of the world and of you all, and I heartily desire you all to pray for me. You bow your head, not because it's expected, because it is yours. That speech, those words, this moment, you step toward the block. The executioner whispers something in French. You don't catch it all. Just 2 words. Ne bougez pas. Don't move. You kneel. The silk bunches around your knees, cold wood beneath you. You fix your gaze forward, not at the sword, not at the crowd. Just forward. The blindfold is offered again. You shake your head. You would rather see the last breath of sky. The priest mutters a prayer. The wind picks up. The sparrow is gone. You say quietly, not for anyone else, Lord, into thy hands I commend my spirit. You close your eyes and wait. The moment stretches. Time does something strange. It doesn't pause, not really. It just elongates. You feel the cold press of air on your cheeks, the silk tightening ever so slightly as you shift your weight on your knees. Your heartbeat no longer thuds. It hovers suspended somewhere between a breath and a memory. Then nothing. No flash, no scream, no sharp jolt of pain. Just absence, a whisper of fabric, a blur of motion. Then silence so complete, it feels like a held breath from the world itself. And in the crowd, someone gasps. Not everyone sees it clearly. Not everyone watches. A few avert their eyes. One man drops his hat. A woman clutches her hands until her knuckles bleach to bone. The executioner doesn't move right away. He stands still for a moment, sword at his side, like he too is waiting to hear if the world shifts. If something tears, it doesn't. It simply exhales. The priest steps forward and begins his final rites. His voice is steady, but there's a hitch in his throat halfway through the verse. Someone folds the body gently, almost reverently. The silk clings to the platform as if reluctant to let go. There is no blood on the crowd. There is no grand spectacle. Just the soft thud of something final. Historians still argue whether you felt anything in those last seconds, whether the sword was fast enough, whether the Frenchman delivered a clean stroke. But those debates missed the point, because what mattered wasn't what you felt, it was what they saw. A queen who didn't flinch, a woman who chose to face the blade with eyes wide open. In the quiet that follows, the guards step forward. They lift your body carefully, though no one instructed them to. Someone wraps the head in linen, quickly, respectfully. There are rules even now. The platform clears. The crowd begins to disperse, not with cheers, not with outrage, but with something closer to awe. No one knows what to say. Not yet. And as they walk away one by one, they carry you with them, not in arms, but in fragments. In the way your voice sounded, in the way your spine stayed straight, in the way your silence rang louder than all the court's accusations combined. Later that day, a young maid scrubs the platform. Her hands are red from the cold water, but she doesn't complain. She finds a strand of hair caught in a knot in the wood, dark, curled, still warm from the sun. She tucks it into her apron and says nothing. She will keep it for years, never tell a soul, because she saw something today that the history books will never catch. She saw you, not the queen, not the sinner, just you. The linen bundle is placed into a small wooden box, not a coffin. Something more humble. Simple boards, no adornments. They bury you within the tower grounds, not far from the chapel. The grave is shallow. The stone is late in coming. It won't bear your full name. It won't say queen. But some visitors will know, and some will leave flowers anyway. The sword is cleaned and wrapped. Returned to France. Another job done. Another name blurred in translation. The executioner will never speak of it again, not out of cruelty, but out of respect. Because even he knew that day something rare happened on his scaffold. Something they'd whisper about for centuries, even if they never quite got the story right. And far away, perhaps in Hatfield, your daughter stares out a window. She doesn't know why she feels the cold so deeply that morning, but she pulls the blanket closer and says your name under her breath. Quiet, firm, as if to remind the world you are still here. And in that whisper, you rise again. Days pass, then weeks, and the tower continues breathing slow and indifferent as it always has. Your room is cleaned, the linens are burned. The book of hours disappears into some clerk's drawer, the ink still fresh in its margins. Your name lingers, but not on lips, on walls, on tapestries, on letters tucked away in drawers. Not in mourning, not yet, but in caution. Because no one wants to be the next Anne Boleyn. Except some do. Quietly, carefully. They don't say it aloud, but you feel them thinking it, even now. You're gone, but you are not absent. And then something strange happens. The birds return, not just the sparrow from the rafters, others. As if the very air around the scaffold has softened. As if nature, long banished from the tower's rituals, comes back to reclaim the space you filled. The guards notice first. One of them swears he hears a nightingale the morning after your execution. Another finds a feather on the windowsill striped in russet and black. A scribe, young curious, writes about it in the margins of his tower ledger. 3 birds this morning, 1 at the chapel, 1 on the scaffold rail, 1 at the Queen's window. He underlines Queen. Historians will find the note centuries later. They'll squint, they'll speculate, they'll dismiss it. But the birds knew. You're not haunting this place. You're holding it still. Meanwhile, in court, things move quickly. Too quickly. Jane Seymour is seen walking the garden with Henry less than a week after your burial. He laughs too loudly. Her smile is brittle. She's wearing a soft blue that makes her look innocent. But she isn't. She can't be. Not in this story. You've left her a ghost to follow. And follow she will. But even she doesn't realize she won't escape your shadow. Not ever. There's a rumor that Henry ordered new portraits commissioned. Ones where Jane is already painted beside him even before their wedding. But the artists hesitate. They say the angle feels wrong, like the frame still remembers you. Elizabeth, your daughter, is moved further from court. Too young to understand, but not too young to listen. Servants hush when she enters. Some stop calling her princess. Others whisper bastard. But she doesn't cry. She watches. And that you think, wherever your thoughts now live, is far more dangerous. One day she will stop watching, and she will begin recording. Sir Kingston writes a short note before he leaves the tower for good. It's addressed to no one, just tucked into a drawer. In it, he says, she showed more courage than any man I've known. Then crosses it out, then rewrites, she showed more clarity than any king I've served. He signs nothing. He seals nothing. He just leaves it there in the dark, like a candle that never needed to be lit. Back in France, the swordsman tells no one about the job. But in quiet moments and lonely inns, he traces the air with his finger, an old gesture, one he used on your scaffold. Someone asks him once, "Do you ever think about the women?" And he replies, "Only one." Then never speaks again. In England, your legacy becomes a knot, pulled by historians, twisted by poets, smoothed by queens who learn your story and wonder if they're next. But in the tower, your cell remains, empty, still. But if someone listens carefully, really carefully, they might hear wings in the rafters and a single word carved faintly into the wall. Remember, night falls again over the tower. But this time it doesn't feel like closure. It feels like continuation. The kind of dark that doesn't end a story but gently folds it into silence. You're not here, not physically. But the space hasn't forgotten you. The air still holds your final breath. The stones still hold your weight. And somewhere above the chapel, a single window glows longer than it should, like it's watching for someone who might return. Inside that window, a woman scribbles something in a ledger. She's not important, not in the official records. A servant, a scribe. No title worth engraving. But she's been watching everything. She saw your walk to the scaffold. She heard the speech. And in her bones, she knew something different had just happened. Tonight she writes one line in her personal book of reflections. There is a strange kind of peace in knowing she knew exactly who she was, and she underlines it. Twice. Historians still argue whether the people of England mourned you, whether you were hated, pitied, feared, but they forget to ask the servants, the cooks, the women who dressed you, the girls who carried the silk that now lies buried in damp earth. They remember differently. Whispers carry in laundry rooms and candlelit halls for decades. And that whisper always begins the same way. She looked straight at him. No scream, no flinch, just clarity. Like someone who'd already decided how she'd be remembered. Elsewhere in a different wing of the palace, Henry dreams. Fitfully, a restless king in a vast bed. He shifts under heavy covers and mutters your name. Not loud enough to wake anyone, but just loud enough for the shadows to catch it. In his dream, you are laughing, wearing red, crowned in a way that makes him feel small. And when he reaches for you, your smile sharpens, not cruel, but sure. Then he wakes drenched in sweat. He tells no one. He will marry Jane within days, but he will avoid the tower for weeks. Too many ghosts. Too much noise in the stone. Meanwhile, your daughter begins asking questions. She's smart, of course she is. The servants answer carefully. They've been told to. But children hear what's between words. She hears it all, especially the gaps. One night she pulls her blanket up and whispers, "I remember." She doesn't know what it means yet. But the moment she says it, you know. Wherever you are now, you know. The legacy begins not with your death, but with her first sentence. And somewhere in a dusty storeroom, your book of hours still sits, tucked between scrolls no one reads. But every so often a scholar finds it, opens it, sees the margins, the small notations, the word remember, the sketch of the sparrow, the line about cages, and they pause. Every time. They don't know why. They think it's coincidence. But it's not. It's resonance. You are still echoing, still instructing, still unfolding. Even now. Especially now. And as the moon rises again over the tower, casting soft silver across your forgotten window, a quiet wind stirs the ivy along the outer wall. It moves as if reaching upward, like a memory returning to its source. Far beyond the tower, past fields blooming under late spring skies, and towns already forgetting your name, a needle pricks velvet. Not metaphorically, literally. In a tailor's shop near Whitehall, a new gown is being fitted. Pale cream with gold trim, modest neckline, soft sleeves, the kind of dress designed to calm a country still buzzing from your scandal. Jane Seymour stands on the raised platform, arms slightly lifted as the fabric is pinned around her ribs. She does not flinch, but she also does not smile. The dress is beautiful in the way silence can be beautiful. Soft, obedient, unthreatening. Unlike yours, the seamstress adjusts the waist and murmurs, "Will you be needing a coronation robe?" Your Grace, Jane hesitates. No, she says after a pause. Not yet. Because even now, in her new title and her unwrinkled reputation, she knows. You're not finished. Your shadow lingers in every corridor Henry walks. And Jane has heard the whispers. The ones that say your ghost walks barefoot through the tower gardens at dusk. The ones that say a sparrow sometimes lands near the chapel and refuses to move. The ones that say Henry can't sleep. Historians still argue whether Jane loved Henry or feared him. But even if she loved him, she feared you more. Because how do you compete with a woman who died without breaking back at Hatfield? Elizabeth is drawing. She uses a stub of charcoal on parchment stolen from a steward's satchel. She's drawn a bird. It has a crown on its head and fire in its wings. No one taught her that. She just knew. A nurse sees it and asks gently, "Is that a dove?" Elizabeth looks up. "No," she replies. "It's my mother." The nurse freezes, unsure what to say. She's not supposed to speak of you. None of them are. But children have long memories and short patience for rules. Later, when Elizabeth naps, the nurse tucks the drawing into a book, just in case. Years from now, someone will find it and wonder. In another part of London, a merchant sells an ivory comb he claims belonged to you. It didn't, but someone buys it anyway, not because they believe the story, because they want to, because in the absence of truth, relics rise. And you are becoming relic, legend, lesson, warning. The court changes its tone. Women lower their voices. Men pause before saying the word ambition near anyone wearing pearls. They don't forget you. They bury you, but badly. The kind of burial where the dirt keeps shifting, where the ground refuses to stay still. And the people, especially the women, start whispering your name not in fear, but in recognition. They've seen what happens when a woman becomes too intelligent, too noticed, too vocal. And they begin to practice quiet resistance. You are not their martyr. You are their manual. At the tower, your cell is reassigned. Briefly. A woman accused of heresy is kept there. She refuses food. She refuses the priest. She asks only for a book. They ask which one. She says anything with a margin. They bring her one. And when she opens it, she finds one word underlined on the second page. Integrity. She stares at it for a long time and smiles. Even in death, you're still making introductions. The court doesn't mourn for long. It rarely does. Within days, they're smiling again, drinking, planning. The musicians who once played for you now rehearse softer songs for Jane. The court painters quietly switch subjects. Pearls return to fashion yours once were avoided, associated too closely with that sharp gaze that sharpened fate. And yet, no one wears green. Not for months. Not because it's banned, but because it was your color. The one you wore when you first danced with Henry before the title, before the trials, before the tower. Some claim you wore it when you learned you were to die. Others say you requested it for your burial. The truth, you simply owned it. Now it lies unworn like a silence no one dares break. Henry moves forward as he always does, but not unchanged. He begins to age oddly, his eyes dull faster than expected. His leg wound once a small sore festers. Some say it's guilt made manifest. Others say it's justice slow and rot-bound. He grows irritable, snaps at his advisors, spends more time alone. And the wives, well, they begin to notice a pattern. One by one, even Jane. She says little, but she watches. Everyone watches. Because power may shift, but it's echo that stays. Meanwhile, your family begins to fracture. Your father, Thomas Boleyn, does not speak your name. Not in public, not in private. He pretends he never had a daughter named Anne. But he reads the court bulletins. He knows every word printed about you. And one night alone in his study, he takes a wine-soaked cloth and wipes your name from a letter addressed to him, then stares at the smear of ink for an hour. He will die alone, remembered more for his cowardice than his bloodline. Historians still argue whether your fall doomed the Boleyns or simply revealed who they always were. Your mother doesn't write. She doesn't visit Elizabeth. She disappears from record as if choosing to become footnote instead of chapter. But your uncle, he thrives. He learns. He waits. Because in Tudor England, every tragedy is a strategy in disguise. And George lingers in the court's memory differently. He becomes the brother who flew too close, too poetic, too proud. His verses are copied by young noblemen who don't understand them. His letters are burned by those who do. And yet, his name is said with a kind of reluctant respect, because he didn't beg. And neither did you. There's talk of erasing you entirely from the record, of striking your reign from the royal roll. But it proves difficult. Too many people remember. Too many documents bear your signature. Too many servants talk. Because here's the truth. Legacy isn't built by those in power. It's built by those who survive it. A kitchen maid tells her daughter a bedtime story about a queen who didn't cry. A scribe pens a quiet line at the bottom of a list. She died well. A boy sneaks into the tower and touches the platform where you knelt. Just once. Just to feel if anything lingers. And it does. You're not in their history books. Not yet. But you're in their habits. And that lasts longer than any monument. Because fear fades. But influence echoes. Especially when you've taught the world how to watch with eyes wide open and to walk to the scaffold like it's a throne. The sun rises slower these days, or so it seems. In Hatfield, Elizabeth wakes with a kind of stillness not common in children. Her nurse says she never cries in the morning, just stares at the ceiling as if listening for something. At breakfast, she arranges her fruit carefully, 2 pieces to the left, 1 to the right, before touching any of it. A pattern, a ritual. No one knows where she learned it. But you do. Because you remember doing the same thing in Calais. 2 bits of bread to the left, a fig to the right. A queen in training long before anyone dared call you that. Elizabeth is learning to observe. And in doing so, she is learning you. A shadow of a woman she barely remembers, but already mimics. Historians still argue whether you had a direct hand in her upbringing before the tower. Some claim your influence ended at her birth. But they forget how inheritance works. Not the legal kind, the invisible kind. The way your daughter tilts her head when questioned. The way her smile arrives a second late, just long enough to cause unease. The way she waits before answering. You've passed down more than red hair. In the tower, the new prisoner in your former cell doesn't last long. She's accused of theft, not treason. But the air in the room unnerves her. She says she feels watched. At night, she swears she hears pages turning. The guard laughs. Says it's just the wind. But he locks the door a little faster after that. Some nights, the priest who saw you last walks the chapel corridor twice, even if he doesn't need to. Just to see the candle by your window. Just to confirm it's out. It always is. But once it wasn't. And that was enough. In court, the new queen tries to speak sweetly about you once. Jane Seymour, ever gentle, ever strategic, says during supper, the late queen was elegant. Henry says nothing. Just stabs his meat a little too hard. Everyone feels it. The ghost in the room. It wears no white sheet, no rattle of chains. It wears a green gown and a half smile and a silence that commands. You haunt better than most live. A diplomat from Spain requests to see Elizabeth. He's denied. Too soon, they say. Too sensitive. But the real reason is that no one knows what she'll say. Because sometimes she talks in riddles. Sometimes she says things like, "The birds only speak to those who listen." The diplomat laughs, then shivers. Later that week, he writes in his journal, "The little one. She has her mother's eyes. I do not mean shape or color. I mean weight." He doesn't explain. He doesn't have to. In a cottage miles away, a woman who once served in your household lights a candle on her mantle. No one asks why. She doesn't answer. But she does it every year. Same day, same hour. The candle burns for exactly 30 minutes. No more, no less. Some things deserve precision. Your portrait is taken down in several households, then put back up after Jane's passing. Quietly. No announcements. Just returned. As if the wall felt empty without you. Because it did. And then, in a twist that no one except maybe you could have predicted, Henry names Elizabeth his heir. Not now, not first. But there, in writing. Which means something. Which means everything. Because while they tried to erase you, they couldn't erase what you made. And what you made is waiting, learning, sharpening her gaze like a blade. Because even now, even gone, you are still a lesson no one dares teach directly. But everyone learns. The scaffold is gone, dismantled, board stacked, blood scrubbed, scrubbed again, then salted. Not because anyone believes it still stains, but because the memory does. The platform where you knelt was reused, not ceremoniously, not preserved. Some of the planks were made into benches, others burned for warmth in a steward's hearth. A few vanished entirely pocketed, some say by guards or monks who believed the wood could carry blessings or curses depending on how it was used. One piece ended up in a small chapel near Kent. It holds a single candle, lit every Friday. No one speaks of it directly. But a woman from the parish once whispered that wood knows the weight of truth. She didn't explain. She didn't need to. Truth always leaves a groove. The tower itself returns to rhythm. Prisoners come and go. Heads are bowed. Some roll. But your name is the one they still say quietly. Even the stones seem to lean differently where you once stood. A sentry claims the air feels cooler in that corner, that his torch won't stay lit as long. He asks to be reassigned. He's not denied, because no one wants to test the edge of history. Henry continues his reign, but the shine has dulled. He grows larger, slower. His temper becomes legend. One day he snaps at a page so violently the boy faints. Henry blames the candlelight. But even he knows it wasn't the candle. It was the presence. You remain his unfinished thought. The paragraph he rewrites in his mind, but never improves. When Jane dies too soon, too gently, he weeps. But not for her, not really. He weeps for the echo. The way her passing sounds like a repeat of yours, only softer, tidier, less scandalous, less remembered. And that oddly makes it worse. Because while her name is grieved, yours is debated, and debate lives longer than tears. Meanwhile, Elizabeth is growing, not just in inches, but in intent. She begins to study her tutors as much as they study her. She starts asking questions about you, not directly, not foolishly. She says things like, "Why must a queen always be chosen by a king?" And the tutor stammers. She says, "Is it true my mother was guilty?" And the maid blinks too long. She writes your name for the first time. In the corner of her copybook, it's misspelled, but it doesn't matter. It's written. And with that one act, she breaks a silence no one realized had formed around her like glass. One day in the tower, a young serving boy drops a tray outside your former cell. The crash echoes. He looks up startled, but no one scolds him. Everyone is quiet. They all wait. He picks up the pieces carefully. When asked what startled him, he says, "I thought I heard a voice." They laugh. But they don't laugh loud, because everyone's heard something by now. A sigh where there should be silence. The creak of boards that haven't been stepped on. The sense that someone is still listening. A poet in the north writes a verse inspired by you. She walked to death like to a feast, where silence dressed her better than pearls. He sends it to the court. It's never published, but it circulates. One copy ends up with a woman who keeps it under her pillow for years. Another ends up in the hands of a young girl named Mary. Not your Mary, but another. Another woman who will grow up learning how dangerous it is to be powerful and female. She reads the line about pearls twice, then underlines it. You never wore them at the scaffold, but the world remembers them there anyway, because they imagined you that way, refined, poised, sharp-edged, and unsinkable. And maybe that's the truest portrait, not the brushstrokes, but the myth, the echo, the spark that refuses to go out even when the fire has long since died. The wind returns to the tower in spring, not a biting gust, but a restless one. The kind of wind that turns pages left too close to a window. The kind that makes the ivy scratch against stone like it's trying to remember what the walls used to whisper. A guard stationed near your former cell says the candle won't stay lit after dusk. He changes the wick. He swaps the lantern. Still goes out. He starts leaving it unlit. No one reprimands him. No one wants to tempt you. He tells a cook it feels like someone's reading behind me. The cook mutters, "Then maybe don't turn around." Your name continues its quiet haunt of conversation. Not shouted in court, not sung by poets. Just threaded through gossip, through speculation, through caution. In a tavern in Southwark, a man leans in and says to a stranger, "Did you hear what she said before the sword?" The stranger says no. The man grins. Neither did anyone else. That's the point. They laugh. But then they fall silent. Because there's something chilling in that, not knowing, not being sure. That's what lasts. Not the accusations, not the trials, the uncertainty, the possibility that you might have been innocent, or worse for them, that you might have been right. Elizabeth, now a little older, visits the garden at Hatfield. She walks between rows of yew trees, her small hand trailing along the bark. She stops before a rose bush. She looks at it like it just spoke. Then says softly, "Did she plant this?" The gardener hears her. Pauses. Then nods, though he's not certain. She kneels beside the plant, picks up a fallen petal, holds it up to the light. A tutor approaches, calls her name. She doesn't respond right away. Later that night, she presses the petal between 2 pages of a book. She doesn't mark the spot. She doesn't have to. It's hers. In London, a dressmaker begins stitching subtle birds into the lining of noble women's sleeves. Sparrows, falcons, doves. She says it's for luck. But those who know better. One client asks, "Did you get that from the Queen's court?" The dressmaker shrugged. Which queen? And smile. Because the answer is all of them. Even the ones erased. Especially the ones erased. At the tower, a mason is ordered to replace stonework near the chapel. He finds a faint carving beneath the oldest blocks. Just 2 letters. A.B. No one knows when it was made. He's told to remove it. He doesn't. Instead, he covers it with care. Says the mortar wasn't ready. It's a lie, but a respectful one, because even he, hands thick with lime and dust, knows better than to rewrite what was carved in defiance. Historians still argue whether you left behind a written confession. Some claim you dictated it. Others believe Cromwell forged one and destroyed the rest. But there's no certainty, only fragments. And fragments are dangerous things. They make space for legends, and legends refuse to sit still. A musician in court plays a new melody, something minor, something elegant. When asked what inspired it, he shrugs. Something I dreamed, he says. But later alone, he opens a drawer and pulls out a page from an old folio. One line scribbled in a different hand. Remember me when no one else does. He doesn't know where it came from, but he plays it anyway. And it haunts the halls for weeks, because some melodies don't need origins. They just need ears. And you've always known how to make the world listen. It rains the day Jane Seymour gives birth. Soft at first, just a misting curtain over the palace gardens, but by afternoon, it thickens. The gutters overflow. Servants slip on stone steps. Horses stamp in the mud, restless and wide-eyed. Inside, everything smells of damp cloth and rosemary. Henry waits in the great hall, pacing slowly beneath the tapestries. A fire burns, but it does little to chase off the chill. He has not eaten, has not spoken. His fingers twitch near his belt. Then comes the news: a son, a prince, the heir he always wanted, the one he claimed to need. He closes his eyes and exhales, and for a moment, just one, your name doesn't echo in his ears. But then the messenger adds, she is weak. He opens his eyes. The celebration begins, but he doesn't go to her. Not right away. Instead, he orders music, a feast, a toast in every direction, but not in hers, because joy in Henry's court is transactional, and Jane has given her due. 3 days later, she dies. The tower bells toll for the queen, and once again the black drapes are hung. The people mourn this one. She was sweet, gentle, untouched by scandal. But some servants mutter that the tower has claimed its balance. 3 queens, 1 throne, too much silence. One woman places a flower on Jane's casket, white rose, no note. But beneath the bloom, the stem is tied with green ribbon. No one claims it. No one removes it. Some say the ribbon was frayed, as if cut by a very small blade. You would have appreciated that. Elizabeth has told nothing of Jane's death. Just that the baby is well, that England is secure, that everything is fine. She nods, because she knows how to lie already. But that night, she dreams of her mother. Not as a ghost, as a guide. You stand at the edge of a stone platform, not speaking, just watching her. She reaches for you. You do not move, and she wakes with your name on her lips. Not Anne, not Mama, just truth. In the morning, she asks her nurse to braid her hair differently. In what style, the nurse asks. Elizabeth replies, the kind that holds its shape in wind. The nurse doesn't understand, but she braids it tightly anyway. In the city, a playwright writes a scene where a queen delivers a final monologue before her death. It is not subtle. It is you in everything but name. He submits the play to a company. It is rejected. Too dangerous. But the script is copied and passed by hand. Some lines are whispered in taverns. I was not made to kneel, yet I did so the world would learn what grace looks like under pressure. I bled no more than a man, but look how they stared. Say my name wrong, and I will still rise in your throat. The lines are too sharp for stages, but perfect for memory. At the tower, ivy continues to climb the chapel wall. Each year it grows faster. Each spring, someone tries to trim it back. Each autumn it returns thicker, darker, harder to kill, just like the story, just like the rumor, just like the lesson. Because while kings die and queens are replaced, you are becoming something else entirely. Not monarch, not martyr, myth. And myths, they don't need permission to last. They just need someone to whisper them in the dark. The ink fades before the memory. Decades pass. The tower ages stone, settling deeper wooden beams, creaking with stories no one wants to retell. Names shift. Guards come and go. But in the margins of journals, in the spaces between royal decrees and political reckonings, your name continues to show up. Sometimes full, sometimes scratched out, but always returned. In a dusty ledger kept by a clerk who never left the tower, a new page begins. A visitor to the Queen's cell today claimed to feel a breath on her neck. There was no wind. The page is dated 1563. By then, your daughter is no longer a red-haired child clinging to windowsills. She is Elizabeth Regina, the Virgin Queen. But more importantly, your daughter. She rules not with apology, but with precision, with grace and flint and a crown worn like armor. They say she never married. They say she chose her people over her heart. But they forget to ask why. They forget that her mother once taught her by absence that a queen married to a king is a queen borrowed by history. Elizabeth marries no one, and history bends. She visits the tower rarely, but when she does, she always walks the outer wall slowly, as if listening. She doesn't ask for tours. She doesn't linger in the great halls. Only once is she seen standing near your old cell, a hand pressed lightly to the stone. A guard asks if she needs anything. She says no. Then quieter, she's already given me everything. No one asks what she means. But the next day, a new copy of your portrait is ordered for the Royal Gallery. Not the airbrushed ones, not the ones painted to flatter the court, but the one where you're in green, half-smiling eyes, sharp and mouth slightly parted, as if you're about to say something no one is ready to hear. Elizabeth keeps it in her private chamber. She never explains why. She doesn't have to. In the countryside, young women begin naming their daughters Anne again. For a while, the name had vanished, erased like ink under a wet thumb. But now it returns. Soft at first, then bolder. One girl grows up hearing that her namesake was a queen who danced so cleverly that even kings forgot their footing. Another is told she spoke too much, so they silenced her. And that girl becomes a writer. You do not vanish. You simply scatter. In lace patterns passed down from nursemaid to daughter. In songs whispered at twilight where queens are clever and the endings aren't written by men. In tower tours where guides lower their voices at your cell, not for drama, but respect. You become less of a caution and more of a compass. A quiet, pointed reminder that grace under pressure can be more explosive than war. That a spine straightened in silence is harder to shatter than steel. That being remembered isn't always about being loved. Sometimes it's about being unforgettable. And you are. Still. Always. A sparrow perches on the chapel roof. It watches the sun set behind the Thames, where it glints gold and violet and the color of secrets. The wind shifts, just slightly, like breath, like memory, like your name. The scribes keep writing long after the scribbling stops mattering. They copy dates, names, births, and deaths, coronations, and betrayals. They note which gowns were worn, which treaties signed, which sons survived the cradle. But in the margins where truth tends to hide, your initials appear again. A.B. Sometimes just once. Sometimes over and over, like the writer couldn't help himself. One clerk draws a small bird beside your name. Not a dove, not a falcon. A sparrow, clumsier, humbler, harder to explain. No one notices. Or if they do, they don't ask. In Whitehall Palace, Elizabeth sits by candlelight, staring at a page she's already read 10 times. It's a letter unsigned, rumored to be from you. The one some scholars say was written to Henry from the Tower, the Phantom letter. Historians still argue whether it's real. Elizabeth doesn't care. She reads it as if it's fact, as if it breathes, as if you wrote it directly to her. The lines feel like fire stitched into silk. You have raised me up only to strike me down, and yet I say this without trembling, because I know myself. She closes her eyes and recites it silently, lips unmoving. That sentence lives in her, guides her, saves her. Not because it teaches mercy, but because it teaches defiance without rage. She will rule England longer than any monarch before her. And every time someone calls her clever, cold, cunning, they are naming you. Your shape in her shadow, your spine in her crown, your silence in her speeches. Even those who feared you begin to admire you now that you're no longer a threat. They print pamphlets, paint new portraits, compare you to tragic heroines from Greek plays. It's too late for justice, but not too late for fascination. In a theater in London, a young actor delivers a monologue about a queen accused by her husband. She kneels, hands lifted, and says, "I was not born to be silent, nor will I be quiet in death." The audience gasps, not because it's original, but because it's familiar. They've heard it somewhere, or felt it. The words don't belong to the playwright. They belong to you, and everyone knows it. At the Tower, ivy wraps itself tighter around the chapel wall. Someone tries to cut it back again. It grows back the very next week, thicker. A woman visiting from Flanders leaves a flower at the chapel door. No one follows her. No one stops her. She just whispers, "For the one who spoke first." A sparrow lands on the flower and stays. A clerk who records royal dream interpretations includes an unusual entry. His Majesty reported seeing a woman in green standing beside his bed, holding a book with no title. It doesn't say which Majesty. It doesn't need to. The Tower guards stop assigning new men to your former cell. Too many of them report strange sounds. Too many leave their posts early. They say it's the wind. But the Tower has held wind before. This is something else. This is presence. You are becoming more than memory. You are becoming proof. Proof that ambition can be noble. That silence can be strategy. That fear is not the only legacy left to women who dare. And that perhaps love, real love, isn't given. It's earned by truth. And truth, as you once knew far too well, is a blade just as sharp as the one that took your breath. But not your voice. Never that. Because the wind still carries it. And someone somewhere is always listening. The Tower no longer remembers everyone it has held. Some names fade within a year, some within a season. There are prisoners whose cells remain unvisited, whose stories sleep under stone, never woken by footsteps or candles or tours. But not yours. Your cell remains a hush inside a hush. Even when empty, it feels occupied. Visitors pause there longer. Children grow quiet. Some say the walls are colder, others say warmer. It depends who you ask. A guide once joked, she's the only one who left with her dignity. He didn't say it again, because the echo that followed unnerved him. In Westminster, Elizabeth walks through a gallery of paintings, stopping at one in particular. Your portrait. The original soft green's firm jaw eyes full of knowing. It is not hung highest, but it is hung first. She stands before it silently. An ambassador approaches from Spain. He says politely, "Your Grace, I did not know you displayed her image so prominently." Elizabeth replies without turning, "That's because you don't know what I remember." He does not ask again, because when Elizabeth speaks of you, it's with the stillness of certainty, not grief, not defense, legacy. She wears pearls, not just because they shine, because they remind people of a woman they tried to erase. In secret meetings with her council, she uses your name rarely. But when she does, silence falls. She doesn't mention the accusations. She doesn't need to. She mentions the way you stood, the way you refused, the way even now your story is half whispered and fully felt. In a letter to a foreign queen, Elizabeth once wrote, "To be a woman of crown is to know the weight of silence and the violence of being heard. My mother taught me both." She signs it ER and keeps a copy for herself. A poet at court dedicates a sonnet to you. It is never published, but the lines circulate. She knelt not to plead, but to claim a death more honest than their shame. Your story is now told not in textbooks, but in candlelit corners and ballads that never reach print in stage plays, that disguise you behind fictional names, but preserve your every move. You are no longer accused. You are no longer defended. You are understood. And what greater justice can a woman ask when justice was never hers to begin with? At the tower, the ivy finally reaches the top of the chapel wall. The gardener considers trimming it one last time, but stops. Something in him resists. Instead, he ties a thin green ribbon around the highest branch, just once. No one sees him do it. No one asks why, but the ribbon stays. Year after year, even in snow, even in wind, especially in wind. Because wind, as everyone has come to realize, is where you live now. In whispers, in margins, in daughters. And as Elizabeth stands one final time before your portrait, her hand brushing the frame like a goodbye, she doesn't need to say, she turns and murmurs, "You were not the last, but you were the first to teach me how to last." She walks away, and the candle beside your image flickers once, then steadies. You are not gone. You are becoming. Time bends strangely in legacy. Sometimes it marches forward like a soldier boots heavy progress inevitable. Other times it circles like a hawk over a battlefield, watching the same mistakes play out beneath it again and again. And in your case, time does something far rarer. It listens. Because long after swords dull and kings rot, the story you wrote not with ink, but with presence, refuses to stay quiet. At a convent in Bruges, a novice copies a psalm into the margins of her book. When she finishes, she adds 3 words in fine, careful script for Queen Anne. She doesn't know your full story, but she's heard enough. And sometimes enough is everything. Meanwhile, in a dusty study in Oxford, a professor frowns over a page. A detail doesn't fit. A date doesn't align. He mutters, "This doesn't match what we were told." He's speaking of you. The records of your trial. The testimony changed too many times. The letters were too convenient. The witnesses too frightened. He makes a note in the margin. Consider the possibility that the truth was edited. Then underlines edited twice. Historians still argue whether Henry regretted you, whether in the dead of night he ever whispered your name with something like sorrow. Some say yes, some say never. But the truth, it doesn't matter what he remembered. It matters what survived him. And you did. In songs, in symbols, and every woman told to stay quiet, and every girl who didn't. A girl in Norwich is caught reading aloud from a play that includes your story veiled in metaphor, but unmistakably you. She's punished. But when she returns to her desk, she carves your initials beneath it. Small, simple, defiant. Because your legacy isn't in royal seals or marble statues, it's in that small act of choosing not to forget, of deciding that history doesn't get the last word. You do. Even now. Especially now. The tower no longer holds your body, but it holds your shape, the outline of what it meant to be visible. And for every woman who sees that shape and straightens her spine, your breath continues. Quiet, unbroken, real. In the royal collection, there's a painting long mislabeled. It hangs in a dim corridor not far from the portrait of your daughter Elizabeth, robed in regal crimson and gold. The misnamed painting is smaller, dustier, less adored. Its subject is a woman in green, half-turned eyes, caught mid-thought. No one agrees on who she is. Some say an unnamed lady of the court. Others say a French ambassador's mistress. But the truth lingers in the tilt of the head, at the delicate hands, the way the light seems to hesitate at the edge of her lips. It's you. Not painted to please, painted to endure. An archivist eventually finds an old note scrawled behind the frame, and before the tower, before the accusations, before the page turned too fast. She sends the finding up the chain, but the matter is quietly dismissed. The label remains unchanged. But the archivist, young, sharp, tired of silence, starts a private blog. One post titled, "Queens in Green," draws thousands of quiet readers. You're not officially restored to the wall, but you return to the conversation. And that, as you always knew, is the real throne. Meanwhile, Elizabeth ages. Not visibly, not yet, but inside where the weight lives. She speaks less of marriage, less of heirs, more of stability, more of image. Someone once said she spoke with her mother's mouth, but ruled with her father's spine. They were wrong. She ruled with your clarity, that cold fire that says, "I know what they fear in me, and I will use it." A foreign ambassador dares mention the execution again. A casual line. A mistake. Elizabeth fixes him with that gaze, the one carved from generations of survival, and says, "I carry my mother's name in my marrow." Choose your words carefully, for they must pass through her before they reach me. He does not speak again. Your name becomes a test. A litmus, a reckoning. In plays and poems and private letters penned between women who suspect they've been watched too closely, Anne becomes more than a name. It becomes code, meaning I see you, meaning I won't kneel for nothing, meaning I know what silence costs. And so in a century that tried to define you by your fall, you rise in a different way. Not in portrait halls, not in coronation songs, but in resistance. The quiet, firm kind that passes between fingertips in candlelight. The kind that knots itself into the hem of a girl's dress just before she walks into a room full of men. You have become not myth, not memory, method. They still tell the tale. They still debate the facts. But behind every telling, every retelling, every soft gasp at the word beheaded, and every sigh at too ambitious, you wait. Not as ghost, as mirror. And those who dare look deeply enough, they do not see tragedy. They see a blueprint. In a quiet corner of the British Library, a visitor pulls a dusty folio from a high shelf. It creaks when opened, its pages, brittle, its ink faint. The cover bears no title, only a symbol lightly etched, a single sparrow in flight. The woman reading it does not expect much. She's come out of curiosity, not research. But inside, tucked between two larger entries, is something unexpected. A letter. Unsigned, unfinished, familiar. He says I have failed, but he cannot name how. He says I have sinned, but his laws are of his making. Let him find me guilty of being remembered. The woman reads it twice. Then a third time. She doesn't know if the letter is real. Historians rarely agree. But the words settle somewhere deep like coals under ash. She doesn't copy it. She memorizes it. And when she leaves, she places a hand gently on the binding as if to say, I see you. In another city, a girl studies a portrait of Queen Elizabeth I in her school textbook. It's the usual one, rough collar scepter, that face carved in certainty. She stares at it longer than the others do, then flips to the index. She finds your name. 4 lines, barely a paragraph. She frowns. Later that night, she searches your name online and falls in. Down a rabbit hole of trials and accusations, love letters and executions, green gowns and French swords. She doesn't blink for an hour. When she finally closes her laptop, she whispers, that's not enough. The next day, she writes your name across the cover of her journal. She decorates the A with a crown. She doesn't say why. She doesn't need to. Some stories do not require permission to grow. At the tower, an artist sketches tourists in the courtyard. They move about in clusters, pointing, laughing, reading plaques aloud. But one group stands very still near the scaffold site. A mother, her teenage daughter, and a younger boy. The girl stares at the ground like it might speak. The boy asks, why does this place feel sad? The mother replies softly, because it remembers. The artist hears it and adds a sparrow into the corner of his drawing. No one sees him do it, but it's there, just like you. The court of memory is not built from stone and law. It is built from eyes meeting eyes, from truth passed hand to hand, from the decision to say, this happened, this mattered, this was hers. You were not supposed to be remembered kindly. You were not supposed to be remembered at all. But history is messy. And you were fire wrapped in silk, too bright to dim, too sharp to rewrite. So now you live in every pause after someone says, and then she was executed. Because the silence that follows isn't grief, it's recognition. A cathedral bell tolls across London. It's not for you, but it is. The sound rolls over rooftops and pastures over carriages and crowded markets, brushing the tower walls like a passing breath. It lands on no one in particular, but everyone hears it deep in their chest where old names live. Inside the tower, a child on a school tour points to the chapel. Who's buried there, she asks. The guide hesitates, then recites the list. Lords, ladies, 2 queens. But he says your name last. And the child, frowning, says, why her? Her mother answers before the guide can, because someone was afraid of what she knew. That night, the child tells the story at dinner, says your name like it belongs to her. She doesn't know your full story, but she knows enough. And enough keeps stories alive. In an attic in Yorkshire, a woman opens a chest that belonged to her grandmother. Inside, letters. A pressed flower. A ribbon dyed green, now faded to sea foam. She lifts it carefully, and attached is a note. For the woman who didn't flinch. No date, no explanation, just that. The woman doesn't cry. She just holds the ribbon a moment longer than necessary. Because sometimes inheritance doesn't arrive in bloodlines. Sometimes it arrives in memory. The tower is quieter now. Less cruel, more museum than prison. But not tame. Because places remember who shaped them. And you shaped this place not with steel but with poise. Not with fire but with stillness. A curator discovers your book of hours in the tower's private collection. Not on display, not cataloged. She opens it. A pressed petal falls out. No tag, no seal, just a trace. And in the margin of Psalm 31, she sees a faint line. She knew, and still she stood. She requests it be exhibited. She's denied. But she leaves the petal where it fell. At a university lecture, a student asks, "Why is Anne Boleyn remembered so vividly?" The professor answers, "Because she made memory feel like rebellion." That student later writes her thesis on Women Erased, Too Late. Your name is Chapter 1. Chapter 2. Elizabeth. Chapter 3. Everyone else who finally dared speak while history blinked. The professor gives her an A. But more than that, he gives her your portrait copied from a rare folio printed on fine paper taped inside the cover. She keeps it in her dorm until graduation, then frames it, not in gold, in green, because she knows, and that's all you ever needed anyone to do. No. Say it. Pass it on. Because the most dangerous thing about you was never your ambition. It was your ability to make other women believe they had one too. The candle is lit again, but this time no one knows who lit it. It burns inside the chapel of St. Peter ad Vincula, where your bones are said to rest beneath a stone floor unnamed, unsanctified for centuries. There is no plaque, no flowers, only footsteps above soft as apologies. The flame flickers without wind, and someone, just one person, kneels. They don't cry, they don't speak, they just place a small item on the ground beside the flame. A folded page. From a girl's journal. The only words, "You were the start of something." I see it now. Above the chapel, ivy brushes the stained glass. Outside the tower, crowds come and go. They take pictures. They point at the ravens. They ask about the crown jewels. Some of them hear your name in passing. Only a few feel it linger. And those are the ones who pause near your cell. Those are the ones who know that your death was not an ending. It was a door. A door every woman still walks through when she speaks anyway, when she dares to know more than she's told, when she chooses dignity over survival. You became their reflection. And reflections are harder to erase than bodies. Elizabeth grows older. Her face in the end bears the lines of leadership, not fatigue, but foundation. She does not rewrite your history. She simply embodies it. And that is the louder victory. She never names you in her proclamations, but she quotes you knowingly in her silence. And when she dies, a maid finds a ring in her private collection, a simple locket rarely worn, inside a miniature of her father. And next to it, you, your face, your crown, your green. Because even in the end, she needed you near her, to remind her who taught her to be alone and survive it. A queen crowned not by ceremony, but by clarity. You were never perfect. You were never meant to be. But you were precise. And now, in a world still built on the bones of careful women, your name glows beneath the dust, not as a footnote, not as a warning, but as a compass, pointing always toward what it costs to be seen and what it gives back when you refuse to look away. So now the tower grows quiet again. The stories have all been spoken, the footsteps have stilled, and the windows glow with the soft, forgiving light of evening. If you're still with me, still awake in the hush between memory and dream, then you know now Anne Boleyn was not just a wife or a queen or a caution. She was a beginning, a breath taken in defiance, a voice that still lingers where others were silenced. And maybe tonight, as you close your eyes, you carry something of her with you, not the tragedy, not the trial, but the truth of it all. The resilience, the refusal, the quiet kind of power that doesn't ask permission, but waits for the wind to shift in its favor and then stands. Let that stay with you. Let it soften your thoughts, not with sorrow, but with strength. Let it whisper through your breath as you exhale, like ivy climbing stone, like candlelight on chapel walls. You are safe now. The stories can rest. And so can you. Let the past settle behind your eyes, gentle and complete. Let sleep come without fear, because your truth is never lost, only waiting. Close your eyes, and if you dream of green silk and sharp eyes and a voice saying, "Remember, just nod," she'll understand. Good night, my friend, and sweet dreams.